Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the League of Women Voters Williamson County Georgetown ISD Candidate Forum. Appreciate the candidates for Place 1 joining us this evening. Just quickly wanted to review the format, and then we're going to jump right in it. The format, this is a public-driven discussion. If you are part of the attendees and have a question, please put it in the Q&A. If you put your cursor at the bottom of the screen, you'll see the QA pop up. Enter your question in. These are anonymous questions, and they'll be funneled to me eventually. The forum is following the strict guidelines of the League of Women Voters, which is a nonpartisan organization intended to provide information about candidates and elections to make sure that everyone who can votes, and they vote with as much information as they can possibly get. In other words, we don't care who you vote for, we just want you to vote. So today what we're going to be doing is asking our candidates to spend 3 minutes giving an opening statement. We've already drawn names to see who goes first, and we'll continue to rotate that schedule throughout the Q&A. Once we get to the Q&A section, the first person that answers that question will have 2 minutes to answer, and the subsequent candidates will have 1 minute each. At my discretion as facilitator, I might ask a follow-up question, in which case each candidate gets 30 seconds and will follow the order of the original question. So I hope that all makes sense. So again, to the participants, I encourage you to submit your questions. And just know that they will be reviewed and funneled to me. We want to make sure that there's no questions that represent an inherent bias, so they may not be asked as written. Just keep that in mind. All right, without further ado, we did draw names, and Eric, you're going to start as our first. I will give you notification when you are 30 seconds before the end of your time, just so you know you can wrap it up, and I will do a hard stop when you're done with your time. So Eric, why don't you take your 3 minutes and introduce yourself?
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for putting this on the League of Women Voters. I'm Eric Lashley, and I've lived in Georgetown for over 20 years. My wife and I have 2 kids who graduated from GISD. So I've been a parent. I was a parent for over 16 years as a GISD parent. I love Georgetown. I love the school district. My kids had fantastic education and experience in GISD. My profession, I was a library director here at the Georgetown Public Library for over 20 years. Love my experience here as a public servant. I'm currently an executive director of a nonprofit that serves public libraries across the entire state of Texas. Why am I running for school board? I get that question a lot. And I say that I have 12,000 reasons to run for school board, and those 12,000 reasons are the kids of GISD. I'm running to help improve their lives and improve the academic performance of our district. I am not someone who believes that the STAR test is the best way to measure student achievement. However, it is the measurement the state of Texas uses to hold school districts accountable. And over the last few years, I've seen a steady decline in our test scores, which does concern me. We have 4 schools that are rated F by the TEA, Cooper, Frost, Tippett, and Wagner. And even though those schools are rated F, that does not mean that the students or the teachers are failures. It just means that we're not following the state curriculum, and we need to do a better job. There are wonderful programs in GISD, innovative programs that I am very supportive that my kids benefited from. My kids got out with a year's worth of college credits. So I'm very happy with GISD, and I want to improve that. I think we can be both an innovative district and take care of STAR scores. So it's not an either or, it's something that we can do both of. So I'm running to retain good teachers and to recruit great teachers. I am concerned reading the media about the number of teachers leaving the school district, not here, but nationwide. And because of those historic numbers of teachers leaving, I'm concerned that we need to do a really good job of retaining those teachers. I'm also running to help improve communication between the district and parents and the district and the community. We can always do a better job of communication. And finally, I'm running to help increase community engagement with the district. And what I mean by that is increase mentors, increase volunteers, having community committees that mean something and that can help us with the school district. We're going to need the community support to improve the school district. Every school district can improve, and that's where we're at. So why me? I think I've built a reputation as a trusted leader within this community that treats everyone with kindness and fairness. I know the district is going to face some daunting challenges coming forward, coming out of COVID, and I want to be a part of the solution, and I want to lend my talents to helping the district improve. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Eric. I'm going to reset my clock and ask Brian, you to go next with your 3-minute opening statement.
Well, I moved to Georgetown in 1997, and I've lived continuously in the district since then. I still have 4 kids. 2 of them have graduated from GISD schools and are in college, and 2 of them are still in GISD schools. The youngest one is at I want to say Forbes, but yeah, Forbes Middle School, and the older one is at GIH, Georgetown High School. So when we moved here, there was a, I moved here to be to join IBM as an electrical engineer, and I've had a career in processor design and software design. And through the years, I've volunteered teaching chess at McCoy Elementary. And I've also volunteered with the tennis team in various roles having to do with photography and producing the banquets program. But since we've moved here, when we moved here, the real estate agent was of the opinion that we were, probably the second best school district in Central Texas, right behind Eanes. And so I did a brief study of, going through, highly rated schools in Texas. And there are 8 or 9 school districts in Central Texas that are rated better than we are now. And I don't think we don't have to dive too deep on any one metric. Of course, the STAR tests, we don't do very well on those. And in my opinion, those are a baseline of function test. That test is not created as intended to be hard and trying to fail all the students. But what we don't do very well in a lot of other tests, and the ones that I've seen my kids have a hard time with are the AP exams. And generally the scores in the district that I've heard haven't been very good. So I think that there's probably a fair amount of disappointment in a lot of areas. And I think we need to do better, and I think we can do better. Anyways, I think we can make a difference here with this election, and one of the 3 of us is going to be tasked with doing a very difficult thing, which is to improve, the situation for all of our kids, and so it's really important, and I'd love to you support me.
Thank you, Brian. And James, you are next, 3 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you, Pamela, and thank you to everyone that's participating. Really appreciate the platform and the chance to get to engage with the community. I'd like to start by sharing a little bit of my story. I come from very humble beginnings. At 12 years old, my family was homeless. I spent the next 6 years of my life living off and on the street. Honestly, if it wasn't for a few good teachers, some stubborn coaches, and an amazing administrator, I would have never crossed the finish line of graduation. I honestly didn't know I was aiming for that at that point in my life. Without that accomplishment, I would have never taken the next step, was into the U.S. Navy. I spent 8 years in the Navy. I would have stayed in the Navy forever, but I met a girl, and more importantly, she got pregnant. We started a family, and when I felt JD, my oldest, move in her stomach, my life had changed. I knew I was going to be a good dad. I had no frame of reference for that. I didn't know how I was going to pull it off. I think some days I still don't know how I'm pulling it off. But I knew being present was going to be the start of it. I like to tell people I married Texas. My wife is from this region. Her family all lives here in Central Texas. We moved to Georgetown in 2011. We love the community. We wanted a K through 12 experience for our children. We wanted somewhere where our grandchildren could come back to. Since I've been here, I've been heavily invested in the district. I've been on various committees, PTA president, board member for booster clubs. I've coached every program anyone's ever even given me the opportunity, whether it was sea perch or 7-on-7 or basketball. I even learned to throw a javelin so I could coach a track team one summer. My kids have unfortunately aged to the point where I'm not cool dad anymore, and they're ready to start making more independent decisions. Our youngest is now an 8th grader at Benold, and our oldest is an 11th grader at GHS. Crystal and I always joke about how we raise these two crazily different kids inside the same house. But it's one of the things I love about our district is that they're able to engage kids with different paths. It's one of the things I'm running to keep and to improve. Since I got out of the military and we moved, I have started and built 6 businesses. We're on business 7 right now. I find businesses that are struggling, that have failure. We correct and make improvements. And so over the last 3 years, my last business, we went from a failing business to being listed on the Inc. 5000 list this year. The change in the growth and the way I've learned to manage that and to develop a board-winning businesses is what I want to bring to our district. The growth that's coming to Georgetown is drastically going to change what it's going to look like in the next 5 years. We have to be ahead of that kind of things. We need people who understand the processes and how to implement that while maintaining your culture, while finding ways to improve processes that allow us to correct indicators. And so I hope that through answering some of your questions, I'll earn your vote today. Thank you.
Perfect timing. All right, so this next round, Brian, we're going to start with you. And the first question we have is, please describe your qualifications to serve on the school as a school trustee. And you will have, let me reset this 1 second. You will have 2 minutes, and then I will just remind Eric and James that they will have 1 minute to respond.
Okay, so I think the primary deal is that I'm a father, and I've been involved with teaching my children and tutoring them through their courses at GISD. I see the kind of scores that they get and the kind of feedback they give me from what's going on in their classrooms. I also see, the sort of difficulties that my kids have had when they've left GISD and gone on to college. And so, those are the motivating factors that cause me to want to get on the school board and see if we can improve things for everybody. You've been muted, Pamela.
I did it to myself. So next up is James. And again, the question is, please describe your qualifications to serve as a school trustee.
Yeah, so first and foremost, I'm a current parent in GISD. I have a award-winning leadership demonstrated capacity for growing, changing, creating, fixing. It's things that our board is going to need now. It's one of the biggest challenges our board has. It's become very divisive. We cannot move forward as a district, whether you want to argue a star metric or any other CCMR, graduation rates. We cannot move forward when our board is constantly embattled with each other. Those situations result in fallout like we're seeing in Round Rock. And so that's one of my skill sets I hope to bring.
Okay. And let me reset. And Eric, 1 minute on describe your qualifications to serve as a school trustee, and you're currently on mute.
Yes, thank you. So again, parent of school district, public servant for over 25 years, nationally recognized, statewide, known statewide for our innovative programs. Again, I've served on bond committees, campus improvement committees, strategic planning committees, been a mentor. Again, I've been very involved with band boosters. I think we've all done it. I agree with James that, I think I can bring a lot of peace to the board, and because I work so much with the community, serving on a number of nonprofit boards and committees, and I have a good reputation as a trusted leader in this community, and I will bring that to the board.
Great, thank you. The next round of questions, we'll start with James. From your perspective, what are the most complex problems facing the school district, and how can you tackle them? How will you tackle them?
Wow, that's a lot to cover in 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
I think the most complex thing happening right now is the loss of learning and the trying to figure out and return to what's normal post-COVID, while not burning out our teachers, while managing a tremendous amount of growth that is happening currently and is going to happen over the next 3 to 5 years as multi-billion-dollar companies keep pouring into Williamson County. The solutions are honestly quite simple. Most of the times when you're turning around organizations are growing, it's focusing on your fundamentals. When you're having issues with meeting a metric that we're trying to target, often those things come down to not doing the basics. If we're having attendance issues post-COVID and we're having behavior issues in the classrooms, our kids aren't going to be engaged in learning. It doesn't matter what metric we argue to measure ourselves against, we're not going to be successful if we can't fix the foundational issues that have developed in our campus. And so I would say focusing on those foundationals will fix a lot of, or allow us to then focus on more complex issues.
Eric, you have 1 minute. Same question. So from your perspective, what are the most complex problems facing the school district, and how can you tackle them? How will you go about tackling them?
Well, I agree with James in a lot of ways that, coming out of post-COVID, how do we deal with that? How do we deal with the trauma of COVID? How do we deal with the teachers? I am concerned about the record number of teachers leaving the profession and coming up with a plan to address that, either through retention bonuses, complex school budgeting. That's very complex. Even if we want to give our teachers bigger raises, how do we massage the budget to make that happen? And that's going to take a lot of work. But I agree, just coming out of COVID is going to be very difficult.
And Brian?
I think we have to focus first on, get returning order to the classroom. There's a lot of disinterested students in our district, and those disinterested students find ways of spending time while they're in the classroom, and they're not always synchronized with the ideas of the teacher or the progress that needs to be made on their work or anybody else's work. So, and I think that can help retain teachers too, if they feel like the school administrations are solidly behind them in enforcing classroom rules and, finding alternative outlets for students that just can't seem to behave in a classroom context. So I think that's the very most important thing to do.
If you haven't figured out by now, when I show the red folder, you've got 30 seconds left. So the next question we'll start with Eric. What can you tell us that's great about GISD?
Oh, we'll start with the kids. The kids are great. The teachers are great. The parents are great. The administration's great. There's so many great things about the school district. And I always feel that sometimes people think I'm coming across as negative, but there's so many great things. Fine arts, athletics, the career, military readiness. There's so many great things about GISD. I'm just wanting to see us elevate a little bit better and do multiple things, be innovative and take care of the test scores. Because the state does hold us accountable in the end, but there's so many great things about GISD. Again, I had 2 kids that went through it. No complaints. I really didn't. My kids did extremely well. And I hope and wish that other kids would have the same experience that my kids had. So tons of great things happening at GISD, and we should be proud.
Brian?
Well, GISD has very, very friendly folks. For whether it be teachers or school administration or parents, I've had great interactions with all kinds of folks. When I've been working with the UIL chess program at McCoy, I've had positive interactions with the parents and the teachers that support me in that endeavor. I think a real strong point of our district is the availability of sports and athletic programs to the kids. And another area where we've done really well, I think, is the trade school classes are pretty well developed, and I think a lot of kids are benefiting from a sort of a less traditional study regimen.
Great. And James?
Yeah, in the last decade of spending time on campuses, I would say our teachers are amazing. The way they're able to engage and grab all of our kids, and then you tie that back into greater GISD just through programs that we do have through CTE programs, be it welding or aviation or cosmetology, our advanced classes for kids to have the ability to earn credit prior to leaving high school, and to really set these kids up on individual paths that will allow them for the next step in their lives, the right step for them to succeed, is something I think we do very well inside of GISD. I'm excited that we passed the bond and that we're going to get the Futures Campus to come in and take the CTE programs to the next level and to give some more specialized training. I'm hoping to be able to bring some of the business relationships I have and to tie that to where when these kids finish these programs and they have these industry certifications, they have an avenue to take those and to actually start a career versus waiting 1 to 2 years while they try to spend and build and make relationships. These programs are very similar to what Samsung's doing for Taylor, what Elon Musk is doing for Del Val, and what we can accomplish and finish doing here is take a great program and just take it up to that next level.
All right, Brian, the next question is for you. Regarding teachers' pay, are we paying our teachers enough? Are we supporting them well enough? And what would you do to ensure or support teacher retention? 2 minutes.
Okay, so I don't think we're doing a very good job of either compensating our teachers or supporting our teachers as they are in the classroom. There's as long as I've actually been associated with the district, there's been a lot of discussion about really poor in-classroom behavior on the part of the students, and as long as I've been a part of the district, it is the better teachers that I've known have been able to go and pick up a new job in Round Rock, and they tell me they get about a 10% pay raise when they do that. And it's hard for me to say, hey, why are you doing that? I mean, I think that it's their responsibility to take care of them and their families. And so I think that what we need to do is we need to become more competitive, so that really good teachers in other school districts maybe will come here, maybe to get a 10% pay raise over what they're getting over there. So I think that we really have to combat the desire to have a $300 million bond every once in a while, so that we can build a school and shut down a school. We're not getting very many seats for our dollar, and by doing that, I think we're creating a situation where we're going to have a hard time budgeting for people who actually do instruction. As long as I've ever been in a building, I've never had one tell me how to how to prove a theorem about a triangle. So I think we need to get to renovating schools and building new schools for new seats, but keep the old schools open, and use and repartition our budget so that we can pay our teachers, in principle, a lot more. I'm really worried that we're going to give our teachers a 5% pay raise while we have an 8% inflation rate, and thereby cut their ability to pay for their families by about 3%. And all the while we pat ourselves on the back.
Time's up on that. So James, you get that question next.
Yeah, so it's not as clear cut as not passing more bonds, because bond money is not legally allowed to be used to pay teachers. So there's two different tax bases and two ways we have to do it. We will have to address it through budget measures. As an employer and having multiple companies employing hundreds of people, I understand the argument for competitive pay. You want to be a very well-positioned company or a very well-positioned district to help attract and retain. But the salary piece, I've never met a teacher that said they got into teaching for money. Typically, they have a heart for kids. And typically when we express that in salary, it means we're not meeting something else that the teachers need. Typically when I get this argument, it's I'm not paid enough for this. And it's what is the this that we need to address? You're not paid enough to be a janitor in addition to a teacher. You're not paid enough to be a bus driver, a bus attendant in addition to being a teacher. I agree. So how do we fix those things and do justice for them?
Time's up there. Eric?
The answer is no, we're not paying as much as the state average. The hard part is we do need to adjust it through either retention bonuses for our teachers that have been with us a while, or we start adjusting it. And James is right. The budget's going to be tough, and there are two different budgets, one for the buildings and then one for the staff. However, we can do that, make incremental changes to try to get up there. I agree there are a lot of teachers who do not get into this profession for money, but the fact is I've also met teachers who are saying, I'm going to leave the district because I can make more money going to another district. And there's one who's living with his mom. He can't afford to live here in Georgetown. The cost of living is getting too high. A lot of those are factors that are beyond our control, but the fact is we can control salaries if we make incremental changes.
Great, thanks. The next question, we'll start with James. How do you interpret last fall's split decision on the 5-issue bond election?
Yeah, it's a great question. I take it as a statement from the community. I basically think we failed on the bond measure. You only got 2 of the 5 that we put out. I think the messaging was terrible from the board, but I think the community was smart in that we realized we are growing, we do need campuses, and any of us that were parents during COVID and had to become a teacher through remote measures realized we drastically needed to upgrade our IT infrastructure. So we got those 2 bonds, which was huge for us. We failed on the other 3 that we put a committee out, that we engaged the community. And so the messaging should have been, hey, we appreciate you guys giving us the campuses we need for growth. We appreciate you recognizing the technology infrastructure. We don't understand why these other bonds failed, but we will invest as much time and money coming to that determination so that we can better serve the community in the future.
Great. Eric, you're next.
I think the message was somewhat split, and there's a lack of trust. I think even the bonds that passed did not pass by the margin that were historic. So we didn't do as well with the bonds that did pass. I think the swimming pool, there was the second time that had come up for the committee to the voters, and they just didn't want to have any part of it. So again, there was a little lack of trust in what had been put out by the board. And so again, I think we should have gone back to the drawing board, but I think a lack of trust.
And Brian.
I'm not entirely sure why the school board is bringing the same issue to the voters multiple times, with in quick succession. So I really can't explain why there even was a pool bond vote at all. In terms of some of the others, I think some of the others weren't necessarily very well thought out, and We certainly didn't make a very good case for them in the public. They weren't, some of the ones that failed weren't necessarily all that expensive. But if the community can't see the need and can't justify why they're paying, extra taxes for these things, I think it's fair for them to say, hey, no. And in terms of the big one, the idea, one of the ideas is to, move Benold Middle School someplace else after we just built a really, really nice football field and a really nice track out at Benold. And I think, we as a community have a desire to see that the school board is looking more than about, 2 inches past its nose as to what it's going to do. Elementary schools don't get football fields and they don't get, squishy tracks. And so if that was our plan, then we should never built that stuff.
Your time is up, Brian. Sorry. Sorry to interrupt you. All right, the next question, we'll start with Eric. And question is GISD prepared for its projected growth over the next few years?
I think we're pretty prepared in terms of buildings and facilities, but again, I've been here since 1996, and we're always behind. The population was 25,500 when I moved here, and we always seem to be far behind. We can do a better job of planning. We've done a good job in a lot of our planning for buildings, and we know that there are more buildings that are going to come or that are going to be needed for the kids. The one concern I have is to watch out for the number of private schools, the number of charter schools that are out there, and how many school children or parents will choose those options versus GISD. And that will impact our growth numbers as we move forward.
I cut you off early. I'm sorry. Do you have anything else you want to add?
That's okay. Again, I think we're doing a pretty good job. It's tough. It's tough, but we'll hire the demographers and people. I trust that we're keeping up. We know it's coming. I mean, we're always behind.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. Brian, 1 minute on, are we prepared for the projected growth?
I think so. I think that the current school board and the school boards prior have done a good job of acquiring property, prior to the growth, so that we don't have to necessarily pay top market rate for the land that we're building on. As far as I can tell, the class sizes have remained relatively constant in the 20 years plus that I've been associated with the district. So I feel comfortable that the processes that are being used should continue to do well in the future.
And James?
I think we were doing well, getting ready for growth, and then Central Texas changed with additions of companies like Samsung and Microdyne and Celltech coming. What we were planning for and what the board did a great job acquiring assets, land, and things for, and the recent bonds for, was based off of projections that changed to very drastically. We're looking at going from 12,000 students to 20,000 students now, not 12 to 15. So we are not set up for that today. We do have a ton of planning to do to get ready for that. And the biggest concern is the influx that's going to happen is not going to be a natural growth influx. It's going to be an influx that happens rapidly as Samsung spins up a whole business unit and brings 30,000 people into the area. We could see it hit middle school heavy versus a K through 12 progression, or hit high school heavy. And so we have to have plans in place to allow us to be flexible at all different levels to react very quickly, or we will fall behind.
Okay, great. I'm just going to pause for a moment and remind the attendees that this is a public-driven Q&A. So if you have questions, please send them to the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. And I will have my reviewer review them and email me. So if you see me moving around, it's because I'm watching the clock and I'm watching my email. So just a reminder on that. So the next question, we'll start with Brian. And this has to do with the poor star performance. Well, let me just rephrase this just a smidge about school performance. So I'm interested in your perspective about school performance, and I'm also interested and what your thoughts are about the star rating system and what you know about the Texas Smart Schools rating system.
Well, the Texas Smart Schools rating system was there was a fairly interesting talk about that fairly recently out at Sun City. And there's lots of different ways you can measure these things. I think the STAR test is basically measuring minimum function to graduate from high school. And so the fact that we, only 60% of our students can pass that exam is fairly disappointing. I can tell you that my own son is having a fair amount of difficulty with the reading part of the STAR. And that's because they've de-emphasized lists of words to learn how to spell in the vocabulary in elementary school. And so there's a notion that children will learn words and their meanings by osmosis as they read. And I can tell you that that hasn't worked for my son. And it isn't as though reading is a pleasure activity for at least my kids anymore. They're more interested in video games and the like. So I think we really have to go back to sort of basics and make sure that we're drilling on important things like spelling and vocabulary, and that will make I think that will greatly improve the STAR tests, at least for reading and writing.
All right, next, and this is James, 1 minute.
Yeah, so the STAR test, the smart schools, they're kind of funny that the accountability ratings, the smart stuff was put together by our old comptroller to argue that the accountability ratings are inept, but they both use the same data points manipulated in two different ways to rate schools. My biggest objection with STAR is that you can't use it to manage. It's a trailing indicator. We don't get that result until May. The year is over. If you're waiting to May to help my kid to correct something, we have already failed that whole year. So you can't wait a year to make a decision on how to address learning challenges in a school. I think in business, we use KPIs and we use them that are very relevant and that are happening now. We're attempting to make that shift using the MAP system in the district to allow us to look at kids where they're at today and make those adjustments real time. I do believe the STAR test is an indicator, and it shows if we're doing everything else well, we should see that result on our STAR test.
Okay. And Eric?
I agree. If we're doing everything well and we're following the state mandated curriculum, the STAR test should not be an issue for us. And that's what's concerning to me. I've been here since '96 and I've seen it going downward, and seeing the test scores for the third graders in elementary, especially on reading as a librarian, is very concerning to me. My kids graduate from Georgetown High School, which was a B-rated school. And if you look, as they moved up, their schools were kind of CB rated all the way up to the end. And what I'm worried about is there's going to be a tsunami coming in that we're going to have lower rated schools going forward. Smart schools, same thing. They're using lots of different apples to apples comparisons for other districts. What's concerning is Georgetown is just rated lower, and either way you look at it, we're rated lower than any other school district in our area. And that concerns me because I'm Georgetown proud, and we should be the top rated school district in this area.
Okay, thank you. So we have about 10 minutes left, and I want to make sure we have time for closing statements, and we're still following order. So James, you've got 2 minutes for a closing statement.
Well, I just want to start by thanking everyone for attending. It looks like we have about 60 participants. That's amazing. I appreciate you guys being involved and actually making informed decisions to vote. It's something that doesn't happen enough today. We are definitely at a point of challenge for our district. We've done some things very well. We've struggled in some areas. The growth that we're gonna see is going to compound the things we're not doing well. I've seen it in business time and time again. If you do not fix what's at the foundation of our flaws and you keep trying to grow on top of that, eventually the whole house will tumble. So getting back to and identifying these things that happened either because of COVID or were exacerbated and more easily identified because of COVID, kids in classrooms, behavior issues, things that are disrupting the learning that should be happening, If we can't get that addressed and corrected, the whole thing is going to be a wash. I mean, if you want to argue STAR testing is our perfect metrics, we'll never achieve it if we don't have the foundation correct. If you want to argue CCMR, graduation rates, or any other metric is not going to be accomplished if we cannot get kids back learning at the foundational principles of education, reading, writing, arithmetic. Like, we need to drive those things back home and get kids in classes so we can help them learn. And then, like we've discussed, we have to retain our teachers. They're our greatest asset inside our district. If we don't have engaged, great teachers, man, there's no one to reach our kids. I mean, the system needs all pieces to run. It needs the pillars to stand on to keep moving forward. So I believe that with my leadership and what I've done in business the last 16 years and the amount of involvement I've had in our district, I am the right person at the right time to help transition and lead us through this challenge. And I would ask for you to show up May 7th and vote for me. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, James. Eric, you have 2 minutes. Closing statement.
Yes. Well, again, thank you for those who have tuned in, and thanks to Brian and James for running. I know how tough it is. I'm running as a trustee to help the children of Georgetown receive a quality education. This pandemic has been extremely disruptive, and it's going to make our task even more difficult. I'm worried that parents are going to choose charter schools and private schools over our district schools. I'm concerned that teachers are leaving in record numbers, and I'm worried about their stress levels. Although I have concerns about the district, I have faith in Dr. Brent. I have faith in our teachers. I have faith in the staff. I have faith in the Board of Trustees. And most importantly, I have faith in the students of GISD. I have served this community for over 25 years. I have built trust within this community. Through my leadership and the connections that I have throughout the community, I can get the community's assistance. I've served a number of committees within the district. I've served on a number of non-profit boards and other community committees. My expertise is not in education, but my strength is in building community and building community trust. I appreciate your consideration, and I too would love your vote starting April 25th, early voting through May 7th. Thank you for your consideration.
Thanks, Eric. And Brian, 2 minutes for closing statement.
Well, I've seen firsthand when I was teaching at Mississippi State University, the problems that happen when students are told that they're succeeding when they're in fact not succeeding. And that it's very hard for a student that once they don't have good solid fundamentals for them to make further progress, that you have to, so we need to react quickly to, I like experimentation in education, but I think we have to react quickly to things that are working and not working. And we need to make sure our children aren't getting behind, because they're going to have to compete at a global level for their careers. And so there's a lot of things that we need to do, and I think that we need to work hard on some of these things, including classroom discipline. I think we need to work hard on keeping the drugs out of our high schools. We need to figure out why the students in middle school seem to be losing interest relative to their interest levels in elementary school by the time they get to high school. We really need to find good ways of motivating kids to want to learn. It's impossible to teach people who aren't interested. And so we really need to work on really hard in those areas.
Great. All right, so we'll close this section down. I want to thank all 3 of you, not only for participating today, but honestly for putting your names forward for such an important role. And again, this is for Place1 for those attendees. So thank you very much. I think everyone has a hard decision in front of them, and I think getting out to vote is #1 in my mind. And wish the 3 of you the best of luck. And I think we're in good hands in Place1, regardless of how that goes. So thank you for that. I'm going to stop the video